you might have data that you would like to contribute to the next GeoTraces intermediate data product. And that would be, of course, data from cruises which are occurred after 2020 and cruises that are occurring up until we produce the next intermediate data product. So the way you do that is you, as always, you go to the IPO website, geotraces.org. Next slide. There's two ways to get into the DOoR portal. You can either hover over data and go to the GeoTraces DOoR, or there's actually a direct link to the DOoR portal. Next. And the DOoR portal is the Data for Oceanic Research portal. This is a place to register the data sets you want to have included in the next IDP. Next. So this is not where you submit your data. This is where you register your data. But the data has to be submitted to the relevant US, Dutch, French, or Chinese National Data Center, or directly to the GeoTraces Data Assembly Center at BODC. And you will get there's a data submission template which is available through the DOoR portal, and you can use that. Next. So the software, this is an incredible tool. It generates a database of all the scientists, the cruises, and the parameters so that we can track the entire process of registering data for the next IDP. Next. There are tutorials, a PDF tutorial, which is very detailed, and a video tutorial that Phoebe put together. These are highly recommended when you want to start getting into the submitting your data for registering your data for the next IDP. Next. We use ORC-IDs, so you have to use your ORC-ID to log in. If you don't have one, you'll be prompted to register for one. Next. Every time you log in, it's going to ask you to confirm your email address and your affiliation, so we can keep track of people, because people move around, and we want to make sure that we maintain an accurate list of the users. Okay, next. So it's already been discussed, but we've eliminated the registration step to look at the IDP data, and we've switched to this fair use agreement. You should read the fair use agreement, understand its intentions and applications. And again, the goal is to recognize the incredible hard work that all the scientists put together to generate this data. Next. So that will take you into the actual portal, where there are actually 7 steps here, 8 steps. The first step is to register your data sets. Next. So a data set is defined on a cruise by cruise basis and a parameter by parameter basis, because that's how the intercalibration process is organized. Next. So a couple of questions. You may be working with colleagues. If a data set was generated by more than one scientist, each scientist can register their portion of the data set, or one of the scientists can assume the responsibility for registering the entire data set on behalf of the other scientists. If you have any questions about any of this, you can contact Mohammed Aju at the GeoTraces Data Assembly Center. His email is shown here. Next. All right, there's many steps in registering a data set, and too many to cover. But if you watch the video tutorial, read the PDF tutorial, each step is explained in great detail. The screenshots are shown. But you can register data from a GeoTraces cruise, a section cruise, a process cruise. You might have data which you think is compliant with GeoTraces. And so perhaps you have dissolved trace element data from a cruise that you completed. And you want to know if that data is appropriate to submit into this into the GeoTraces data product. So you can select your cruise, and you can select your parameters from the extensive lists which are buried inside step 1. Next. Select a cruise, you just scroll down. You can search for the cruise name. If you put in GAO2, you'd see that Atlantic section that people have been discussing already today. Next. If you have compliant data, again, this may apply to many of you, click that button, and there's more details at these 2 websites where you can understand what compliant data actually means from the GeoTraces perspective. Next. There's 2 ways to find your parameters. There's a search tool and a tree exploration tool. You can use either method. You can use both methods. When you've identified a parameter, for example, it's showing here, it's hard to see, but an aerosol acetate parameter has been selected. If I hit the plus button there, it would add it to my list. Next. And when you're done, you say OK, and you'll get this pop-up. Next. So here I've selected all these parameters that I'd like to register. I obviously must have done a vertical profile, and I've got a bunch of dissolved trace element data, and I want to confirm that this is the data set I want to register. Next. All right, I'm going to skip step 2 and jump to step 3 really quickly, and that is the critical component of geotraces is ensuring the accuracy, reliability, and intercomparability of the data. This is an essential component of geotraces. You have to generate intercalibration reports, and those will be reviewed by the Standards and Intercalibration Committee. Next. Said that. This S&I works with the PIs. They will work with you to make sure that your data is the highest possible quality. Next. So there's instructions on how to create these reports. Next. If you select a cruise where you've registered data sets, so KN204, that was a US GA03 cruise, I believe. And here's all the parameters that I had selected. And if you'll notice, next to each parameter, there's a 6-digit barcode that has been assigned automatically to unique 6-digit identifier. Iron data from that cruise submitted by myself and my coworkers from my lab. That data will be tracked using that 6-digit barcode. And it will allow us to follow the data process from the submission to review to finally appearance in the next IDP. Next. It's essential that you don't change these headers and barcodes because this is how we keep track of the data. Next. You can download an intercalibration report template for each parameter. That's shown here are these little blue Word files. You can download a template. Next. Then you can upload that template. Once you've completed that report, you can upload it back in step 4. And you should use the intercalibration report templates that you just downloaded, edit them, submit them, and the Standards and Intercalibration Committee will jump on it and start communicating with you, again, to make sure that your data is of the highest possible quality. Next. Keep going. Next. Yeah, so here's, okay. You can also download data submission templates. These files will show your data set registrations and every parameter with its barcode. And if you haven't already submitted your data to your data center or to the GDAC, it would really be good to use this file to structure your data. Next. I just said that. Next. All right, so this is what it looks like. It has some metadata in these orange colored cells that we prefer you not edit. So it shows your name, your ORC ID, the cruise ID, the geotraces cruise ID. Next. Oh yeah, don't pay attention. We don't want you to edit certain cells. Next. All right, we recommend that you use the CDataNet quality flag scheme, and that's explained if you go to that link. Next. And then here you need to enter information that's consistent with your cruise logs and cruise reports. For example, there might be an event ID number for each station. There might be a sample ID number, sample depth, coordinates, date and time. These are all things that would uniquely identify your data set. So you need to enter enough information that your data set is clearly unique and different from someone else's. Next. This is the key part. Now, if you look in what's in the little red box now, you see dissolved iron concentration from a bottle, and it has a little, that 6-digit barcode, DU1, I can't read it. But the point is, don't edit those. This is how we keep track of the data. You could enter your data now into this spreadsheet. And it asks you to enter the actual data in the preferred units, the standard deviation, and the flag code for each parameter. Next. If you use this, then you could submit it to your data center. Next. If in many cases, you might have already submitted your data to your national data center, and you wouldn't have used this format if you didn't go in through the DOoR portal. Um, it's really helpful to put together the next data product if everyone uses templates like this. And you have to communicate with Mohammed at GDAC to discuss the most efficient way to get your actual data associated with these data set registrations from the DOoR. It's actually easy to do. You may have to actually just reformat your data, dump it into this template, and resubmit it. And the data centers are fully aware of this and are helpful in getting it done. Next. All right. If you go back to step 2, we want to make sure that the data, the PIs, the data generators, the grad students, the postdocs, and analysts, those people who are responsible for a given data set, get associated with that data set. And we do that, again, using ORC IDs. You can return to step 2 at any time to complete or modify this information. Next. So you just need the ORC IDs and institutional email addresses of the people who are responsible for the data set. Next. Step 5 is you have to tell us that it's okay to use your data in an IDP. So you can select cruise by cruise, parameter by parameter to allow us to use the data in the next intermediate data product. And you can change your mind if you like. Next. In step 6, if your data has been published, if there's a DOI for the paper or a DOI for the data set, please enter that here, because that way we can make sure your data are correctly cited. And if the publications are not yet available, then you can always return to this page when they're published and link them to your data. Next. The last step, list my data sets. You can follow this whole process with every data set you've registered from the List My Data Sets link. Next. For example, you can see which scientists have been linked to each data set and the principal investigators. Next. You can see when the S&I committee has received and approved your intercalibration report. Next. All right, so again, there's much more information on the tutorials for using the DOoR portal, and I encourage you to look at that, and you can, of course, contact me at any time. But what's really important is to thank everyone who contributed to the IDP 2021, and that is, of course, the people who generated the data, the members of the Standards and Intercalibration Committee. They work very hard. Data Management Committee, the Parameter Definition Committee, of course, Mohammed and his team at GDAC, at the BODC, they are responsible for processing all this data and handing it off to Reiner. The DOoR portal, the software was actually developed at Toulouse by this team. It's a fantastic development for us. WebODV, again, you've already heard from Reiner and his team. Catherine and Elena at the International Project Office, and then the people at the National Data Centers who have just helped us immensely in getting the data properly formatted and transmitted to get into the data product. Next. And of course, it's important to acknowledge the financial support for SCORE. This is supported in large part by the U.S. National Science Foundation through a series of grants and contributions from other member countries in GeoTraces. Next. So if you have any questions, make sure ask Elena first. She has more answers than I do, but then you could ask me. And I think that's it.